The moment you feel lost is usually the moment you're being called back. Something is already moving. You can sense it in the quiet moments, in the pause before sleep, in that strange feeling that life doesn't fit the way it used to. It's like standing in a house you've lived in for years and suddenly realizing the walls were never yours. This isn't about going somewhere new. This is about returning to what you were before the noise, before the masks, before survival became your personality. Home isn't a location. Home is the version of you that doesn't need to perform, the part that shows up when pretending gets too heavy to carry, when an old identity starts cracking like dry paint and something real begins to breathe underneath. If you've felt out of sync lately, that's not confusion. That's a signal. Before we go deeper, take a second to like and subscribe. It may seem small, but when you do that, it tells YouTube this message matters, and it helps it reach the people who need to hear it before what's coming fully arrives. Now listen closely. This feeling didn't come from nowhere. The Great Flash isn't a future event you wait for. It's already counting down, like the pressure before a storm or the silence before glass shatters. Something is about to drop away, and not everyone is ready for what happens when it does. Chapter 1. When the noise drops, the truth gets loud. Before anything dramatic shows up in the world, something quieter happens inside you. So quiet that most people walk right past it. No visions, no explosions, just a subtle shift, like realizing the room went silent and you're the only one who noticed. This is the moment when what was always yours starts coming back online. You might wonder, why now? Why me? Because nothing new is being added to you. Nothing is being installed or upgraded. What's happening is simpler and more unsettling. The version of you that existed before pressure, before adaptation, before you learned how to survive, is resurfacing. Like a radio signal clearing after years of static. The Great Flash doesn't hit like lightning. It aligns, like 1,000 clocks suddenly ticking in the same rhythm. People don't gain new truths. They recognize old ones. And once you hear that inner tone again, you can't unhear it. That's why things start feeling off. Jobs, conversations, habits. It's not that life broke. It's that you're no longer tuned to the lie. This shift doesn't ask for permission. It answers the question you've been afraid to ask. What if the real you was never lost, only muted? Chapter 2. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the act. What's happening doesn't feel like becoming someone new. There's no dramatic makeover, no sudden awakening story to tell. It feels closer to recognition, like running into an old friend and realizing that friend was you. The shift isn't loud, it's familiar, almost uncomfortable in how obvious it suddenly feels. People love to point at the world and talk about endings, doomsday clocks, final warnings, systems about to fall apart. But the clock that matters isn't hanging on a wall or flashing on a screen. It's inside your chest, and it's been ticking quietly for a long time. This inner clock isn't racing toward disaster. It's moving toward honesty, toward the moment where pretending costs more energy than telling the truth, toward the second when holding the mask feels heavier than letting it drop. That's why you feel restless. That's why distractions don't work anymore. You might ask, is something wrong with me? No. What's wrong is expiring. This isn't destruction, it's expiration. Like milk past its date, the false version of you can't be consumed anymore. The closer that clock gets to midnight, the harder it becomes to lie to yourself. And once that moment arrives, there's no going back. Chapter 3. When the mask expires, nothing can hold it up. Midnight isn't fire in the streets or chaos in the sky. It's far more personal than that. Midnight is the moment the version of you that was built to survive runs out of fuel. Not because it failed, but because its job is finished. The false self doesn't explode or collapse in a dramatic way. It simply loses tension, like a balloon slowly leaking air until it can't stay inflated. As that moment gets closer, you don't feel panic. You feel pressure, a calm, steady awareness that something no longer fits. The conversations feel heavier. The roles feel tighter. The pretending starts to cost too much. The distance between who you are and who you've been acting as stretches so wide that it can't be bridged anymore. This is usually where people ask, "Why am I so exhausted lately?" But it's not exhaustion, it's clarity. You're not burned out from doing too much. You're worn out from being something you're not. That's a very different kind of weight. When the illusion loses energy, effort can't keep it alive. Motivation can't rescue it. Discipline can't glue it back together. This isn't a breakdown, it's an ending by expiration. And endings like this don't feel violent. They feel final. Not because you're weak, but because you're finished pretending. Chapter 4. Light doesn't arrive. The shadow runs out of time. The great flash doesn't come crashing in like a spotlight. It doesn't flood your life with brightness or answers. It does something quieter and far more disruptive. It lets the shadow expire. The things that only survived because you were numb, distracted, or trying to adapt simply lose their grip. Not because you fought them, but because you stopped feeding them. Right before this settles in, a strange shift happens. Your tolerance disappears. The things you used to put up with suddenly feel heavy, almost painful. Forced conversations, fake smiles, empty routines. It's like your body refuses to digest what isn't real anymore. Not out of anger, out of alignment. You might wonder, why am I so irritable lately? Why does everything feel off? It's not moodiness, it's clarity. Like tasting clean water after years of drinking something stale. Once your system recognizes what's natural, anything artificial becomes impossible to swallow. This isn't sensitivity. Sensitivity reacts. This is discernment. Discernment doesn't argue, it withdraws. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify the shift. Your energy simply stops cooperating with what drains it. And when that happens, shadow doesn't need to be defeated. It starves. Quietly, completely. Chapter 5. When truth feels lighter than effort. At the same time everything false begins to fall away, something else pulls you in. Not with force, not with urgency, but with ease. You find yourself wanting less noise and more meaning. Fewer words, more truth. Conversations that don't circle, don't perform, don't impress, just connect. It's not that your world suddenly changes, it's that your appetite does. You stop chasing what once excited you. Not because it's bad, but because it asks you to be someone you're no longer willing to pretend to be. You notice how certain rooms exhaust you before you even enter them. How some relationships feel like costumes you forgot to take off. And without drama, without announcements, you step back. You might think, am I losing interest in life? No. You're losing interest in distortion. This isn't withdrawal, it's orientation. like a compass quietly correcting itself when it's been off for too long. You don't force the turn, it just happens. The noise of the world doesn't disappear, deadlines still exist, opinions still shout. But something has changed. It's like standing behind thick glass during a storm. You can see the chaos, you can hear it faintly, but it no longer enters your body. And that's how you know you're moving closer to home. Chapter 6. When your frequency breaks free, something subtle begins to ripple through you, almost invisible at first. Your energy, your presence, starts vibrating differently. It's not random. It's the early pull of the great flash, quietly gathering power beneath the surface. Like a tide rising before the storm, you feel it tugging at everything you thought you were supposed to be. The version of you shaped by rules, expectations, and survival strategies begins to loosen. Old programming, worn-out habits, voices that told you who to be, they start fading because your original frequency, the one you were born with, is resurfacing. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It hums softly, guiding you home. And your soul, it never forgets the way. The only thing that ever gets lost is the signal, buried beneath years of compromise and noise. Sometimes that signal arrives late, and that's exactly the point. There's a strange grace in delay. Arriving late clears fear. It softens regret. It replaces "I'm too early" or "I missed my chance" with gratitude. You realize you didn't fail. You were timed perfectly, and that timing is everything, because what's coming next will not wait for hesitation. Chapter 7. The breath that humanity forgot. For centuries, humanity has been stuck in a long, unconscious inhale. We brace ourselves without realizing it, tightening our shoulders under expectations, stiffening our spines under pressure, wearing emotional armor like it's part of our body. It's a posture we've practiced so long we forget it's even there, as natural as breathing. Every rule, every fear, every unspoken must has added weight, a quiet tension that pulls at our energy without pause. And then comes the great flash. Not a force from the outside, but a refusal from within. It's the exhale we forgot existed. The body, the soul, finally letting go of what it no longer needs to carry. Not because someone hands you relief, or life softens magically, or the world bends in your favor. No, because the inner self refuses to inhale any heavier energy. It's like a lung that has held smoke for years finally opening, a river bursting through a dam it built itself. The old strain can't stay, the tension can't hold, and suddenly what once weighed you down begins to fall away, naturally, quietly, inevitably. The exhale has begun, and nothing can stop it. Chapter 8. The weight that vanishes without effort. Slowly, almost unnoticed, people begin shedding weight they didn't know existed, burdens passed down through generations, beliefs that were never truly theirs, expectations stitched into their spine before they even knew how to think for themselves. It's like carrying a backpack full of stones you never put in yourself, but somehow learned to balance anyway. And then the great flash nudges the system. It doesn't scream or demand. It doesn't force lightning strikes or dramatic upheaval. It simply opens a space where the release becomes unavoidable. The false weight, the shadowed beliefs, the pretenses, the invisible chains, can no longer stay anchored to your soul. You find yourself letting go without struggle, as naturally as breathing out smoke. What's even stranger is that this isn't happening to just one person. Millions are shedding the same invisible load, and in that simultaneous letting go, a pattern emerges. The exhale becomes collective, synchronized, a quiet symphony of freedom. It's a subtle energy shift you can't always see, but you feel it deep in your chest, as if the world itself is finally taking a breath it's been holding for centuries. And when that exhale spreads, nothing can force it back in. Chapter 9. The world isn't waking up, it's exhaling. The great flash doesn't hit the world like a lightning bolt. It doesn't awaken people with fanfare or sudden clarity. What it does is far quieter and far more powerful. It reminds humanity how to breathe, how to relax into existence without holding tension in every muscle, thought, and reaction. It's the subtle shift of shoulders dropping, of chests expanding, of nervous systems remembering ease. And when that breath begins to soften, something profound stirs beneath the surface. One of the biggest lies about awakening is the belief that you have to rise above yourself, that you need to climb some invisible ladder to become better, stronger, brighter. That's not how this works. You don't ascend, you unfreeze. Think of a lake in winter, its surface thick with ice. All life beneath waits quietly, suspended, dormant. When the ice melts, it doesn't rush to the surface. It doesn't compete. It simply flows, moves, and remembers what it was always capable of. That's what the flash does inside people. It doesn't add anything new. It lets what was always alive beneath the frozen surface finally move. And once that thaw starts, everything changes. Quietly, undeniably, irreversibly. Chapter 10. Thawing the frost inside. From the moment we begin to adapt to the world, life teaches us to contract. Every disappointment, every whispered don't, every shame-filled glance, these pile up like layers of frost over the soul. Over time, the frost becomes invisible. You think stiffness, self-protection, caution, and holding back are normal. You forget what it feels like to flow freely, to breathe without armor. Going home isn't about rising higher or becoming better. It's about thawing. The great flash doesn't slam the world open with sudden illumination or jolt you into a new self. It works quietly, like sunlight on frozen water, softening the rigid shapes survival carved into you. The tension loosens, the defenses relax, the frozen places start to melt, layer by layer. As the frost thaws, people don't have to force openness. They become themselves naturally. Conversations are lighter, gestures more relaxed, reactions softer. The world doesn't feel so heavy. That isn't ascension. That isn't transformation. That's safety returning to the body. The version of you that was always meant to exist begins breathing again, free from the ice of fear, shame, and survival. And once that happens, everything else becomes possible. Chapter 11. Love isn't passion, it's breathing without armor. In the energy of the great flash, love isn't romance. It's not longing, desire, or attachment. It's the simple, unshakable state of existing without armor. When the ice inside you begins to melt, something shifts. Judgment, the inner critic that whispers, "not enough," fades. Comparison, the silent measure that makes everything else feel heavy, loosens its grip. Life stops feeling like a constant test, like a battlefield you must protect yourself in. You don't become more than you were. You don't rise above yourself or achieve some new version. You return, You return to who you were before fear intervened, before survival dictated your every move, before the world taught you how to shrink. The tension you've carried for years begins to ease, almost imperceptibly at first, like the way ice slowly gives way to water under sunlight. Suddenly, being yourself feels effortless. Presence feels natural. The pulse of your energy no longer fights against the world. It flows with it. This is the kind of love the flash restores. Not given, not earned, simply remembered. It's the body, the soul, and the self finally agreeing to relax. Chapter 12. The flash doesn't shout, it ripples quietly. The great flash doesn't announce itself with fireworks, sirens, or headlines. There's no celestial signal or global spectacle. You won't see it on the news. It doesn't demand attention. Instead, it moves quietly, like water spreading through cracks in stone. One person feels it. One nervous system softens. One chest exhales fully. And from there, it spreads. People who have learned to stand grounded, steady in themselves, unmoved by drama, begin to shift the energy of everyone around them. Their presence becomes magnetic, not because they speak louder, but because they breathe differently. Calmness becomes contagious. Stability becomes a lesson without a word. You can feel it when you're near them. The tension in the room eases, hearts settle, and the hurried pulse of life slows just enough to notice clarity again. This is what a mass awakening really looks like. Not chaos, not spectacle, not a single global event. It's a quiet, invisible transformation led by stillness, not noise. One person at a time, the world begins to remember how to breathe. And if you pay attention, you might notice it already happening right around you in ways that can't be ignored, even if no one is talking about it. Chapter 13. When the flash settles, peace moves in. After the great flash has passed through, the change isn't loud. There's no dramatic explosion, no sudden aha moment. Instead, something steadier arrives. Peace. Not the kind that erases challenges or magically fixes everything, but the kind that clears the fog. Confusion lifts. Life stops feeling like something you have to hold on to with clenched fists. You start to realize it's okay not to have all the answers. You don't need to control every outcome or anticipate every move. You respond instead of reacting. You move with life instead of against it. The armor you built over years of fear, doubt, and survival quietly dissolves, like ice melting in spring sunlight. You don't force it, it simply unravels, leaving space for your presence to settle back into its natural rhythm. Suddenly, showing up as yourself isn't exhausting. Being alive isn't a performance. You feel lighter, calmer, freer, and you notice how much easier it is to move through the world without carrying unnecessary tension. The flash doesn't make life perfect. It makes life manageable in the only way that matters, by returning you to your own center. And once you're centered, everything else falls into perspective. Conclusion. This new peace the great flash brings doesn't just calm the soul, it changes the rules. The tools that once guided behavior, fear, guilt, scarcity, comparison, they lose their grip. No longer can someone push buttons you didn't even know you were carrying. Insecurity no longer writes your decisions, and manipulation hits only empty walls. Suddenly, things become clearer. Discernment sharpens like a knife. You see intent behind words, actions, and energy. You don't have to analyze endlessly. Your body and intuition notice what's real and what's performance, and it becomes impossible to mistake the two. Trust grows, not because someone validates you, but because you remember the authority you've always carried inside. You start realizing something radical. You cannot be bought, convinced, or bribed into belonging. Belonging is no longer external. You already carry it. It doesn't depend on approval, relationships, titles, or appearances. That alone changes how you navigate the world. This is why the flash is destabilizing and liberating at once. It doesn't just awaken individuals, it awakens the unshakable self, the kind of presence that can't be steered by old systems, old fears, or old expectations. Once peace anchors in, control over you is no longer possible. And as we come to the close, remember this: going home was never about running away from life. It's not a distant place, a dream, or a reward waiting at the finish line. Going home is about finally being here, fully present, fully embodied, fully grounded. It's not floating above reality, trying to escape it. It's sinking into it, feeling it, breathing it, living it as it truly is. Quiet, stable, alive. If everything you've heard today stirred something inside you, maybe this wasn't just information. Maybe it was recognition, a reminder of what your soul has always known. And if that resonates deeply, perhaps you're already home. Before you go, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and comment the number 77. It's a small action, but it signals to YouTube that this message matters. And that helps reach the people who need it most before the great flash shifts everything. Share this insight, hold on to the awareness, and watch how the subtle pull of home grows stronger every day. The journey isn't over. The flash is still moving, still aligning, still awakening what's been quietly waiting. Stay close, stay present, and watch as the world begins to recognize you, just as you've remembered yourself.